What if I told you everything you know about Roman gladiators is wrong? Forget the blood and sand for a moment. I'm about to show you a hidden world, the one that existed just outside the arena walls. This is the story of their life, not their death. Most people picture gladiators as slaves, chained and broken, living in squalor. But the reality was far more complex. Many weren't slaves at all. They were volunteers, free men who signed contracts, seeking fame and fortune. Imagine that. Choosing a life where every day could be your last, all for a shot at glory. They signed away their freedom for a set period, becoming part of a gladiator school or ludus. But these weren't just prisons. They were something else entirely. The ludus was their new home, a strange mix of a military barracks and a high-stakes training camp. But here's the first surprise. The living conditions were often better than those of the average Roman citizen. Think about it. A gladiator was an incredibly valuable asset, an investment. Their owners, the Lanisti, couldn't afford to have them sick or weak. So, they were fed high-energy diets, rich in barley, beans, and dried fruit. Archaeologists have found their bones, and they show incredible density, a result of this specialized diet and intense training. They even had access to something most Romans could only dream of: top-tier medical care. Doctors for gladiators were some of the best in the empire. They were masters of anatomy and surgery, patching up wounds that would have been fatal for anyone else. Galen, one of the most famous physicians in all of history, actually started his career as a doctor to gladiators. These men weren't just patching up cuts, they were pioneers of sports medicine. They understood diet, physical therapy, and how to keep these human weapons in peak condition. An injured gladiator couldn't earn money. A dead gladiator was a total loss. So their health was paramount. But it wasn't just their bodies that were cared for. Inside the ludus, a strict hierarchy formed. New recruits were at the bottom, but skilled veterans, the ones who survived and won, earned immense respect. They formed brotherhoods, called familiae. These weren't just fellow fighters, they were family. They looked out for each other, shared meals, and even mourned their fallen comrades. In a world of constant peril, these bonds were everything. But here's something you probably never imagined. They had fan clubs. That's right. Gladiators were the rock stars of the Roman world. The superstars. Their images were everywhere, on oil lamps, mosaics, and graffiti on city walls. Fans would chant their names in the streets. Children played with gladiator action figures made of clay. They were celebrities, their faces recognized across the empire. The most famous ones had nicknames, like Celadus, the heartthrob of the girls, or Crescens, the netter of girls by night. Their fame brought them privileges, even within the confines of the ludus. And with fame came admirers. Wealthy Roman women were obsessed with them. It was a forbidden attraction, a fascination with their raw power and celebrity status. Some would pay huge sums of money just for a private meeting. These weren't secret, shameful encounters. They were a status symbol for the women and a major source of income for the gladiator and his owner. A successful gladiator could earn more in a single appearance than a legionary soldier earned in a year. And what did they do with all that money? They didn't just hand it all over to their owners. They had their own savings. They could buy personal items, better food, and even support families on the outside. Yes, families. Many gladiators, despite their brutal profession, had wives and children. We've found tombstones commissioned by gladiators for their beloved wives, with heartbreaking inscriptions. One reads, "To my dearest wife, with whom I lived for 5 sweet years." These weren't mindless brutes. They were husbands and fathers, living a strange double life. And some even managed to buy their way out. The ultimate prize wasn't just winning in the arena. It was winning their freedom. After fulfilling their contract, or by displaying extraordinary skill and bravery, a gladiator could be awarded the rudis, a wooden sword. This was the symbol of their discharge. They were free men again. Some retired quietly, using their earnings to open a business or buy a small farm. but others found it hard to leave the life behind. The fame was addictive. So what did they do? Many retired gladiators became trainers. They passed on their deadly skills to the next generation, their experience making them invaluable assets to any ludus. Some even became highly sought-after bodyguards for politicians and wealthy aristocrats. Imagine walking through Rome, flanked by a legendary ex-gladiator. It was the ultimate power move. But there was another, even more surprising path. Some returned to the arena as referees. They were the only ones who truly understood the rules and the art of the fight. Their word was law inside the sand-covered circle, but their lives were still governed by one powerful figure, the lanista, the owner of the ludus. He was part businessman, part promoter, part warden. The lanista was often a social outcast, seen as a dealer in death and entertainment. Yet, they could become incredibly wealthy and influential. They negotiated contracts with politicians who sponsored the games, rented out their best fighters, and managed every aspect of their gladiators' lives. The relationship between a lanista and his gladiators was complex. It was one of ownership, but also of mutual dependence. A successful gladiator made his lanista rich, and a smart lanista kept his gladiators alive and winning. But what about their downtime? What did they do when they weren't training or fighting? Life wasn't all discipline and drudgery. They had moments of leisure. They played dice games, gambled, and shared stories. The ludus had its own social life, almost like a small, self-contained village. They were allowed visitors, including family and those admiring fans. It was a tightly controlled environment, but it wasn't a dungeon. It was a place where men from all walks of life, slaves, criminals, prisoners of war, and free volunteers, were forged into something new. A community built on a foundation of violence, but a community nonetheless. And this leads to the biggest misconception of all. We see them as disposable figures, destined for an early grave. But many survived. Some fought only a few times a year. The best were protected, saved for major events. They were too valuable to be thrown away carelessly. Some gladiators lived to retire, to see their children grow up, to become old men. Their life was a gamble, the ultimate high-stakes game. But it wasn't a death sentence. It was a choice, a career, and for a select few, a path to a life they could never have achieved otherwise. A life of fame, fortune, and a strange kind of honor, lived just outside the shadow of the arena. So the next time you think of a gladiator, don't just picture the sword and shield. Picture the doctor who stitched his wounds, the wife who waited for him, the fans who screamed his name, and the wooden sword that promised a future beyond the sand. Their real story is so much more fascinating than the myth. What part of the gladiator's hidden life surprised you the most? Let me know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this journey into the past, smash that like button, share this video with a friend who loves history, and make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss what we uncover next. Thanks for watching.